Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for the overall rating and review of the whole series of Pluto, the animated series, which is a anime adaptation of the manga. And I must admit, it was really quite interesting going through this series and also going through each of the acts and also each of the arcs and seeing how much of it actually lined up with the anime. Now, if it's one thing I sort of did point out early in sort of like the first couple of episodes, is that there seemed to be a bit of a change in sort of like the time chronology in regards to some of the events. And that did seem to hold very firm, especially with some of the episodes. There were some things that were taken from one book and applied to, or a little bit applied to another, just to make things that make more sense in regards to some of the characters within the story. So I want to focus on my overall review and rating in regards to the characters in this series. So the first we have is the character of Mont Blanc. And with Mont Blanc, I must admit, even though we didn't get to see the death of Mont Blanc, did what they do take away from the story, where in turn that we do see that, okay, Mont Blanc is dead and he's got these horns on his corpse, and even though we might not understand what the horns on the corpse mean, we do learn later that they are connected to Pluto, which is a Roman god, and in turn also the name of a robot who we do eventually find out who this robot is, in turn being Sahad / Pluto. With that, it would have been nice to sort of like see a little bit more around the character of Mont Blanc. But then not long after that, we move into the next character, which I absolutely enjoyed what they did with this character, and that was the character of North number 2, or North 2, as I covered in my reviews. And one thing that they did really well with this character that I really enjoyed was showing, yes, that this character was once a robot connected to war. But the person that he was serving, yes, he did sort of antagonize him at the beginning, but as we drew closer towards the end of his story, even in the first episode, we did end up seeing him come to appreciate North number 2, and then eventually we end up getting Gashit, his appearance, and also the beginning of his investigations around the world, and to even finding out to who Pluto was and what the character's motives were all about and what he was wanting to achieve. The next characters that I'd like to bring up is the character of Atom, as even though Atom is sort of like introduced at the end of the first, and we get to see more of the character in the second episode, and of course more throughout the rest of the episodes, even though he's spoken about in some episodes. And of course we got the revival of the character in another, till you eventually learn to see what even Dr. Tenma did just to try to revive him. And I do actually like the motive to which Dr. Tenma used in reviving his character. Not only in the manga, but I also like the way how it was addressed in the anime. Because one thing that you do get to see in the anime is that when he works on reviving Atom, aka slash Tobio slash Astro Boy, one of the important things that plays a big part in the story is what were Gashit's last motives. And that plays an important part in basically the revival of Atom's character. In other words, were Gashit's motives that of hatred or that of love and or compassion to whether it be a fellow person or to a fellow robot in the universe? And we get that when we eventually see the death of him, in regards to that, and how that applies, or how that chip is being used to show, okay, yes, you can be a robot that has hatred, but can you actually learn to overcome that hatred? And we do get to see that also happen with Atom too, especially after the character is revived in the story. Next, we have the characters of Hercules and Brando, and I must admit, other things that sort of like revolve around these characters, we do learn that in the story, not only in the manga, but it's also seen and presented reasonably well in the anime, and that is to learn that Brando, which he absolutely loves his family, and you see that clear as day. Is he a perfect father, though, in the story? And one thing that I have always sort of questioned in regards to the family of the story was, were these children that he had, were they actually his children and robots, or were these children that we got to see actual children? And I think the way how the anime answered that, they felt more like actual children instead of robot children like Atom. And I really enjoyed how that was brought across. And this is, of course, talking of Brando. Then we move into the character of Hercules. So as we start to jump to the character of Hercules, you can see that he's a man who definitely wants to, again, like North 2, wanting to leave his past behind to do something a little bit more constructive, caring, and more creative with his time. Yes, in turn, much like Brando, yes, he's a wrestler, and the word that's used is sort of like a Pancrasian wrestler. So in that essence, we've got it sort of like addressing a Greek form of martial arts in the story. But we also learn that a number of these characters all have connections to the war, and that even includes Epsilon. Now, we learn that Epsilon himself, again, is a character that was not wanting to participate in the war for any means, but he was also asked to do things that he didn't really want to do, even after the war, or in other words, post after the war. But in the process, we also get to learn and understand that there is a character that he has a deep lot of affection for. Would affection be the right word for it? I'm not too sure. And that is the character of Wasily, basically being one of the first war orphans that he saved in Persia, and in finding one, he ends up finding more, adopts and brings them back home to Australia, and you get to learn that with the story, again, moving into the area of the Wassily and Epsilon. I know I've brought this up once before in one of the previous videos in relation to the Pluto review, and that is that I really wish they had Vasily actually say something, or at least give a verbal warning to Epsilon in the story, especially when it came to the area of the safe house. Then you have, of course, what Vasily did in regards to the picture. I think the picture worked in one essence, but I think the story might have carried more weight with Vasily saying something to Epsilon. Now, moving into the other characters that we get to see, we of course have Tenma, to which we get to see a lot of the work that he's been involved in within each and every episode, and also to how he's connected to basically one of the end robots, all except the robot of Bora. And of course, with the character of Bora, we learn that Bora is created by Abdullah / Goji. That's it. Abdullah, who is also Goji. And we learn that this robot, who gets away in his appearance in being human, has quite a number of visitations within the story. And whilst we're seeing it play out on screen, we also understand that this character has a bit of hatred as well towards the world. Of course, there's also the anti-robot group, and also Adolf Haas and his connection, as well as his family, which was actually quite interesting as to how they did that, and it was really good to see them uphold the manga in regards to that situation, in regards to how Adolf Haas didn't like Yashit, but Yashit was there to protect him as much as he didn't like him. Both characters sort of served a purpose within that. Now, the two characters that I am going to bring up, and again, they have been brought up before in one of the previous videos, and yes, I will bring them up again for this particular video, and those characters are being the Teddy, being Roosevelt. One thing with the character of the Teddy in the story, I think in the manga we got a better understanding, as like with Roosevelt we do get to see the character being addressed by name. In the anime, it didn't really address it by name. It just spoke to the Teddy, and it sort of expected the audience to know who this Teddy was. And even though I've read the manga, there's going to be people out there who have not read the manga of Pluto at all and not understand who the F is this Teddy character. What the hell is their name? Well, not everyone's going to want to go and pick up the manga to find out who the character is. This is why it's important to address the name of a character in a story, whether this story is in manga, in a comic, even in an audio story, right? You want to see this character's name addressed, so you know, so the audience knows which character is being spoken to and at what time. Yes, it was really good to see of how they addressed some of the characters' hatred towards the world, and also the deal that he did with the president. One character that really stood out as a bit of a spotlight in regards to the Teddy, aka Roosevelt, is a character that I'm about to bring up now, and that is the character of Brow. I enjoyed the interactions that were seen with the character of Brow in the story. Not only in the manga, but also in the anime, because when seeing Brow being addressed by Gashit, say for the first as well as the second time, even around the time that he actually learns that he is responsible for a human's death, but we also learn the truth around what led to that human's death. And that was fantastic. And the character of Brow himself is also a character that, whilst they have had, say, no problems with their programming at all, the reason why they are where they are is because, yes, they have killed a human. And it was good seeing that character being addressed on screen. We understood who that character was from the beginning. And I mean from the beginning. Same applies with the manga, same applies to the screen. Very well done, very well executed. Now, the last character I am going to have to bring up is one that I really wish they paid more, or they put a little bit more effort into. And yes, this character's time was, I'd have to say, small on screen. But even though it was small on screen, they did try to use some little scenes to try to give a bit of information as to how this character was able to feel sadness. And that is the character of Uran. Now, throughout reading the manga and also watching the anime as well, one thing that really sparked my interest in the story was, how does she really pick up on their emotions? Like, how does she pick up on this sadness so well that she detects it, whether it's from a human, right? That's one example. Whether she picks it up from a human, whether she picks it up from an animal, whether she picks it up from another robot. How? Right? That is just one thing that really makes my mind tick. How does she do it? Right? She might be a small character with a small role, but how does she execute it? How does she pick it up? Like, I think with the robot side of things, one thing that they did fantastic in regards to, especially around the end, which I love and enjoyed, and that was when Atom sent the blueprints for the anti-proton bomb to basically stop it from exploding and causing destruction in the Earth into the character of Sahad / Pluto. And that was absolutely amazing, right? It gave us insight into how this character is able to see things, understand things, more than any other character in the story, right? That stood out top of the league. But when it comes to the character of Uran, I was hoping that there would have been a little bit more time and effort applied to her character. Like, even without Atom in the picture, right? They had the opportunity to literally give a little bit more information to us, the audience, to show how she picks up on these things. yes, there was like a type of pulse in one, but it was so minuscule that it hardly helped the scene at all. But when it comes to, say, other characters, they carried their presence. In regards to Uran, yes, in some things her presence did carry, but when it came to the understanding of how her ability worked, even though, yes, she is a robot just like Atom, there was no real clear distinction to show how that was applied. Yes, it's brought up in the manga, but it's not, again, in the manga, it's not really clearly shown. And I was really hoping that the anime would have had the opportunity to actually put that forward and fill that gap for us. Surprisingly, it really didn't, and I was really hoping it would have, which is really disappointing. But did I still enjoy the character in regards to some of her roles, like when she was talking to some of the professors, whether it be Hoffman or whoever else, Okamitsu. Of course, we had her interaction with Tenma, to which I actually quite enjoyed her interaction with Tenma. If I were to say, I think Tenma probably held the scene more than what she actually did. So now to the overall rating, I guess, of the characterizations of the character, or review. Now, that's just a review of all the characters. Now it's for the rating of all the characters. So, rating of the characters overall, like from the first episode to the last episode, I must admit, it's really hard to sort of like put it in order of sort of like favorite character, even though I did enjoy each character's appearance, including those who represented one side and one who represented another. So let's move into the overall main character performance for this whole series. Now, this is the whole series. So looking back on the notes for the first 2 episodes, I gave the main characters an 8 out of 10. Into the next slot, an 8 out of 10. For 3 and 4, 8 out of 10. 4, 5, and 6, an 8 out of 10. 4, 7, and 8, an 8.5 out of 10. So for the overall rating for this series, I will give it an 8.5 out of 10. For the supporting characters, for the first episodes, we have an 8 out of 10. For the second lot of episodes, an 8 out of 10. That's episodes 3 and 4. For 5 and 6, also an 8 out of 10. Supporting characters, an 8 out of 10, so it's going to stick with an 8 out of 10. Next is the animation in regards to the story. For the first episode, I gave a 7.5 out of 10. For the second, an 8 out of 10. For 5 and 6, an 8 out of 10. And for the last episode, an 8 out of 10. Now, I'm willing to let that go up to an 8.5 out of 10 in regards to the consistency of what was executed in the story. Next, I will be addressing the soundtrack. For the soundtrack for episodes 1 and 2, 8 out of 10. For 3 and 4, 8 out of 10. For 5 and 6, 8 out of 10. For 7 and 8, I give an 8 out of 10. For consistency within the story, I give it an 8.5 out of 10. Last but not least, we move into the area of the story rating. Now, for the first 2 episodes, I gave an 8 out of 10. For episodes 3 and 4, I gave an 8 out of 10. For episodes 5 and 6, I gave a 7.5 out of 10. And for episodes 7 and 8, I gave an 8.5 out of 10. So if I were to give for the overall series, now with the last 2 episodes before this being a 7.5 out of 10, and with it losing half, I would be happy to say that I give this series an 8.5 out of 10. Now, I must admit, it's been really good covering this series and also reading the manga and remembering what the manga has also put in. I'd love to hear who were your favorite characters that you enjoyed in this series. And not only that, what were your favorite scenes in the series? Were some of your favorite scenes maybe some scenes that I've brought up, that I've mentioned, that I personally enjoy? Or were they something that I might have completely missed? Did you enjoy the character adaptations to the screen? Where I brought up before that I did have some slight issue with some of the character adaptations, but apart from that, it was overall pretty well received by myself. Well, until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.